Hello there everyone, and thank you very much for joining me for a story. Today we're going to read A Dinosaur Named Gus by Elwyn Tate. In the age of dinosaurs, many years ago, giant creatures roamed the world, stomping to and fro. Some were long, some were wide, some were big and spiny. But did you know that some of them were positively tiny? Meet the hero of our tale, a dinosaur named Gus. This friendly little fellow was a Microceratus. Now, while it may be true that Gus was smaller than the rest, when it came to being smart, he was the very best. Gus was always reading in his special little spot. The more he read, the more he knew, the cleverer he got. Then, as his brain grew brainier and packed with brainy thoughts, he started to invent machines and gadgets of all sorts. The first of his inventions was the bread and butter slicer. It spreads the butter better, and it cuts the bread much nicer. The next of Gus's gizmos was the tidy up machine. This gadget is the best thing yet for keeping bedrooms clean. And when he'd finished making things, he'd say, "Let's make some more." And that is how young Gus became a clever dinosaur. The amazing flying grab machine. One morning Gus was walking by a prehistoric lake when there came a little rumble and the ground began to shake. As quickly as it started, the shaking seemed to stop, and on the lake a bubble hit the surface with a pop. Then way up high, a mountain top began to fizz and smoulder. Then crash! Right next to Gus there fell a steaming red-hot boulder. "That mountain's not a mountain," mumbled Gus. "That much I know. That mountain's a volcano, and I think it's set to blow. I must tell everyone," he said, "as quickly as I can." And that is just what young Gus did. He ran and ran and ran. At the big volcano, all the dinosaurs were busy. They were stomping here and marching there. It made poor Gus feel dizzy. There has to be a way, thought Gus, of getting their attention. "Excuse me," stomp. "Hello there," stamp. "There's something I should mention."
"Who is this little dinosaur that's making all this fuss?"
said a big and hefty brontosaurus peering down at Gus. "My name is Gus," he answered, "and before you stomp away, there's one or two or three important things I'd like to say." And so Gus told them all about the bubble and the boulder, and the mountain up above, which had begun to smoke and smoulder. They listened for a little while. They did not make a sound. But then they roared with laughter, and they stomped upon the ground. "Oh, what a funny dinosaur you are," they said to Gus. "We are so very big and tall that nothing worries us." But then there was a shudder, and the ground began to shiver. The shivers turned to wobbles, and the wobbles to a quiver. The quivers turned to shaking, and the shaking to a rumble. Then one by one the dinosaurs began to trip and stumble. They wobbled and they toppled, and they heard a giant pop. And then the big volcano went kaboom and blew its top. There was noise and panic everywhere, shouting, running here and there. The lava flowed, the boulders crashed, the dinosaurs all ducked and dashed. They lurched and lunged, they rushed and ran. Gus knew he'd need a clever plan. "I have to think of something fast. What can I do?" he said. And then, at last, a clever thought popped in his clever head. "I must be quick," Gus shouted, as he ran and rushed and raced. "The other dinosaurs are trapped. There is no time to waste." Back at the volcano, there were flames and flares and fires. The dinosaur said,
Goodness me, that lava's creeping higher. If only we had listened to that clever little guy.
Then suddenly a thing came flying towards them in the sky. It was Gus in his invention, and he'd come to save the day. And when the dinosaurs saw Gus, they shouted out, "Hooray!" He picked them up and carried them to keep them safe and sound. And one by one he dropped them off, way up on higher ground. But that was not the end for Gus. He was not done quite yet. He looked around to find the biggest boulder he could get. "I want to use this rock," said Gus, "to make the lava stop." So he zoomed to the volcano and threw it on the top. "And now it's time for home," he cheered, then flew off at full throttle. And do you know what Gus invented next? It was the cork and bottle.